And thank you, Leon, for being a wonderful host and setting everything up. So we're all here at a UX event, so what I'm going to ask is show some noise for those who've heard UX design before. It should be, all right. All right, now what about UX research? And finally, what about content design? All right, to start off our event, we're going to hear from a couple of our UX Go coaches. These coaches are experts in their field, and so let's go ahead and invite Rachel, who is a senior designer and manager from Epic Games, to the front. We'll also be joined by Kirsten, who's a senior researcher at HighSpot. And finally, we have our content design coach, Xinye, who unfortunately isn't able to make it yet. She will be coming soon. So Leon will be giving an overview on content design. Before we move on, does anyone have any quick questions for our presenters sitting at the front row? I guess you could sit back now.
Rachel, do you want to control this?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's just left and right.
Left and right. Okay, gotcha. Hey, folks. I'm Rachel Birnbaum. I'm a product design manager here at Epic Games. Currently, I'm leading a team for Unreal Cloud Service. I don't know if you heard of Unreal Engine. My focus is to make digital content creation tools more accessible for less technical user. In the past, I had a career in aviation industry as a design team lead. My own experience using digital creation tool for aircraft interior design inspired me to work on the technology to make it easier for other creative mind who is less technical to create digital content experience and services. In the near future, I think I will keep focusing on building teams, coaching new designers, and with them, hopefully we can enable the less technical people to make amazing digital content and experience. Thank you. For the first question, what UX design is, it is my personal view that UX design is about helping users to achieve certain goals. So at work, a different designer might have different skills, they prefer different methods. The tasks they're working on might be different from one day to another. But ultimately, designers share this commonality. Their ultimate goal is to help their target user to achieve certain goals. The second question.
Rachel,
yeah.
You can see the slide on the computer too.
Oh, right. Thank you. What are qualities that make a good UX designer? From my perspective, I think the three key qualities are user research, visual communication, and being a team player. As the user experience designer, the most important thing is to understand your user. Even you have resource to, like, say, work with a user researcher, you still need to be able to analyze data and sometimes conduct informal qualitative research to understand your user better. And secondly, as the designer on the team, you're probably responsible for externalize ideas and visualize design solution. Here we're not talking about like artistic visualization skill. We're talking about visualizing ideas and design solution efficiently, effectively for team collaboration, which brings us to the third quality, the team player. So as the designer, you provide a plan, but oftentimes we rely on the collaboration with other professionals to turn idea into reality. There are engineers, project managers, researchers, and more. If you have the best interest of your teammate at heart when collaborating with them, if you enjoy seeing other people succeed, you're probably going to be a great designer. What is the day-to-day of a UX designer in tech? So depends on the phase of a project. The task you're actually working on could be different from week to week. At the beginning of a project is the discovery phase. Most likely you will be working with researcher, marketing people to understand your target group user better. Sometimes you might be doing some research yourself to figure it out. And then later on, during the design solution phase, you probably will be trying to provide the solutions through diagramming, providing mock-ups of different fidelity from low-fi to high fidelity. Some of you who have already taken design classes probably know about it. But whichever phase, chances are you will spend a big part of your time collaborating with other people. When you are in the discovery phase, you will be working with the researcher, marketing people, and later on, you want to constantly coordinating with other designers to make sure your design language are aligned, you're using the same library, and all the detail. Depends on which company, which team you are at. But collaboration, big part of your job. What do you generally need to find a UXD internship or new grad role? For most of the people, you need to get into interviews to get the job. And in order to get interviews, the 3 key things: resume, portfolio, networking. Pretty sure you're all familiar with that. If you invest in creating high quality resume and portfolio, and you're constantly reaching out and go to all the relative events, you will get interviews, through which you will eventually get your dream job. Yeah, that's from me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten and I'm a senior UX researcher at HighSpot, which is a sales enablement platform. And prior to HighSpot, I graduated from UW from the informatics program in 2019. And while I was in school, I did research internships at Google as well as DirecTV. So if anyone has questions later today about what it's like doing research in large companies versus a startup and helping them scale their research practice, please find me afterwards. And so how many of you are interested in exploring a role in UX research? From a raise of hands. Ooh, okay, this is great. So many of you, I love it. So what is UX research? In UX research, we utilize both qualitative and quantitative methodologies throughout the product lifecycle to answer these 3 questions. The first is, what are the behaviors of our users? So you can think of this as building journey maps and doing interviews to better understand what is the day-to-day of our users like and how can we provide and drive meaningful impact for them. And the second, does our product reflect our users' mental models? So here we use different methodologies that relate to neuroscience principles like card sorting and others to understand how can we design something that fits the user's mental models and make the information architecture easy to understand. And the third, are we effectively resonating with users? So after we launch our product and it's out in market, does it resonate? Do people use it? And so there are multiple different methodologies that you can use to measure this. And so what are some qualities that make a good UXR? The first is being empathetic. As a researcher, you're the voice of the user. And the second is being data-driven. Through the different methodologies, you want to use data to make these help product managers, designers, and other people on the team make decisions. And third, that I think not many people think about, is researchers are also really creative. They're creative in the sense of when you're designing a research study, there are so many different approaches you can take, And so that's where you can use your creativity to think about the best research method to use. And the second is when you're displaying your findings and results to stakeholders. So thinking about different frameworks you can use and utilizing storytelling as well when you're presenting your findings, because that's how you're going to make your research results land with your stakeholders and make them want to implement your recommendations. And then the fourth is being strategic. I think a lot of the times when you think about UX research, you think about them only working with designers or product managers, but it really goes beyond that. In my day-to-day, I work with stakeholders across our whole company, our sales team, our revenue team, our operations teams. There's different ways that you can involve yourself throughout the business to help drive impact. And so what is the day-to-day of a UXR in tech? First, and as Rachel mentioned as well, collaboration is huge. You're constantly collaborating with cross-functional partners to identify areas where research might be needed. The second is designing and running your research studies. So this could come in multiple different forms, like running interviews, doing ethnography studies, running surveys. The fourth is my favorite part, is synthesizing all that data that you have. Once you get all your results back, what are the findings that we're going to come up with? And then the last is sharing your results with your cross-functional stakeholders and providing recommendations and helping them implement these changes. And so I think this is really similar to what Rachel mentioned and what you'll find in a lot of UX roles. One is a strong resume that shows the impact you created from past projects. What can you show that from your research, it really influenced the project to be designed a certain way? The second is showing your process. And so I think this is where things are a little bit different compared to a design portfolio, is you want to focus on your research approach, where you want to talk about, if I utilize interviews, why did you utilize interviews? What are the pros and cons of doing interviews rather than a different methodology? And then the last is, when you're going through the interview process, you'll likely have a research challenge where they will give you a scenario and you have to design a research study. And then they might give you some different constraints, like what if you only had 2 weeks to do this? What about 1 month? How would your process change? And so be comfortable talking about 2 to 3 different methodologies and talk about the strengths and drawbacks of each. And I will hand it off to Shinika. Or she's not here.
Yeah, so Xinye is actually not here yet, so what we'll do is pass it on to Leon to talk about content design.
Okay, so just a disclaimer, I'm not a content designer by any means, but Xinye is actually an ex-co-worker of mine. We worked together at Expedia when I was there, so I'm quite familiar with her work from a UX design perspective, so I am very humbled to present her slides for her. And Xinye will be joining us later. She's actually in class right now. She's part of the master's program here. So she'll be here after, I think, 5 p.m. So Xinye looks like that. So if you have content design questions, definitely reach out to her. She is very passionate about it. One thing I was curious about is a lot of you actually clapped or raised your hand and said you have heard of content design before. So I was a bit surprised because content design in UX is a very new sort of world. So does anyone want to give a quick sort of shout out answer of how did you hear of content design? Do we have any brave volunteers who want to share a little bit more on that with me? Okay, please go ahead.
I heard about it. I'm just from scrolling through LinkedIn, looking for jobs. I actually was looking at economy jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I fell into doing some design jobs.
Mm-hmm. How do you think content design, just from your experience, quickly scrolling, is different from UX design or similar?
It was talking more about, it was more kind of in the retail like the website, like how the people like shop a website, I would say, or how they look at that way, or that was my question.
That's a great insight. Thanks for sharing your volunteer. So content design, I want all of you to quickly look at these two sort of wireframes, if you want to call it. One of which is, One of which is from Amazon, and one of them is from LinkedIn. So I want to ask the question, if you look at these wires by themselves, do you think you will be able to find the orders on Amazon? Do you think you would be able to look something up, such as a job opening on LinkedIn? So the answer is it's going to be quite challenging, right? Because UX design doesn't exist in a vacuum. It works side by side with content design. So a great way you can think about content design is really it's a different approach to UX. It's a content-first approach, like the name suggests. But as a content designer, you are a lot more than just a UX copywriter. Sometimes there's that misinterpretation. My English isn't that good, so I can't be a content designer. It's not really a writing job. Like, yes, writing is a big part of content, but content is like a way of thinking, right? You need to think about the whole picture when you talk about content design, just as you need to think about the whole user flow when you create your wires, right? You're not just creating one individual UI. So some good qualities of a content designer, of course, this is coming from Xinye, so not from me. Xinye mentioned you want to be user advocate, you want to be a data-driven problem solver, you want to be a good communicator and collaborator, which has been a common theme across sort of the big three in UX, like Rachel and Kirsten mentioned before me. Another big thing, I would say this is more closely to UX design, is you want to be a good storyteller. When I was working with Xinye at Expedia, we worked within the map space, which is also what Qing'an is working on right now. So when we work in the map space, we need to think about the whole traveler's journey, right? When you book a flight using Expedia, what is that whole story behind it, right? At this point, what is the language you want to be greeted by? What's the voice of tone? So all of that is part of a storytelling. Of course, according to Xinye, like you do need to have a passion for your words. There is a lot of wordsmithing that needs to be done. So if that is someone who you feel like you identify with, I would definitely recommend you check out content design more. Since it is less popular, folks generally in school don't really hear about it until they are already part of the industry. So the day-to-day of a content designer in tech, once again, according to Xinye, 50% is communicate and collaborate. The other 50% is design with content and writing words. So you will be using tools like Figma, but once again, you're approaching the design from a content-first perspective.